Few days ago, there was a coup in a country named Gabon, located in West Africa. We have chosen to talk about Gabon not because of the coup, which takes place all over the world every now and then, but because what is happening in Gabon helps you and me to understand that a system of pauperization has been set up to drag natural resources, rich countries into abject poverty and underdevelopment. These countries were formerly called Third World, but nowadays are collectively called Global South. This system of pauperization is designed, installed, maintained, controlled, and supervised with meticulous planning and care by so-called developed countries. These countries collectively are identified with various names like Global North or Collective West or Anglo-American West. Beneficiaries of this system of pauperization are the countries of Global North, and victims are countries of Global South. In the specific case of Gabon, the beneficiary is France and its allies, and victim is Gabon itself. To understand the sinister plot of pauperization, let's see the geographical location of Gabon, which is located on the western part of Africa. This map shows Gabon's entire eastern and southern boundary is surrounded by Congo. Cameroon is on its north, and Equatorial Guinea is on its northwest. A few words about Gabon. Total area of Gabon is about 103,000 square miles, which is slightly smaller than the province of the state of Telangana. This land is inhabited by 24 lakhs or 2.4 million people. So its population density, therefore, is 23 persons per square mile, whereas the population of Telangana is about 4 crore or 40 million, with population density of 354 per square mile, meaning Telangana is 16 times more populated than Gabon. Mineral resources of Gabon include petroleum, natural gas, manganese, iron ore, diamonds, gold, titanium, and uranium. It also has timber that it exports. France controls all natural resources of Gabon through class of native elites. Natural resources of most of the other poor countries, collectively called Global South, are similarly controlled by rich or developed countries of Global North. These native elites of Gabon are class of unscrupulous domesticated agents of France. They gain political control of the country by winning elections at regular intervals. Their political power is meant to be used to let their Western masters get access to all their natural resources. In exchange, these elites build fortune by transferring all form of national wealth to France and or to the custody of Anglo-American West. Culturally and economically, these elites are delinked from their country from where they derive their fortune. Common people of the land are trapped to pay multitude of taxes to their government, lead the life of workers and peasants, join army or police to protect the elites, and be used as cannon fodder in a military conflict. Common people all along are made to believe that they are living in democracy because they can vote once in many years. They, meaning the common people, are told that they enjoy freedom because they can express futile criticism against their government. Common people are also made to believe they enjoy human rights because their criticism of the government may not be punished as long as it remains futile. Most of the common people do not even speak the language of colonial masters, which in Gabon is French, and is the official language of the nation, and all government works are conducted in this language. How does this model fit in the case of what is happening in Gabon? This country gained so-called independence in 1960. Ali Bongo Ondimba became president of Gabon since October 2009. His father, Omar Bongo, was president from 1967 until 2009. Between father and son, the Bongo dynastic rule continues in Gabon for more than 60 years. These are typical domesticated faithful agents installed to ensure access of all kinds of national resources of Gabon with special reference to the natural resources. Economic disparities and limited political pluralism have occasionally led to discontent. There were intermittent coup attempts which highlighted underlying political and social tensions within the country. This model is the very basis of political, economic, and military influence of collective West. This model applies to all former colonies, including countries of South Asia like India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka. This model helped the collective West to win 2 world wars and is the basis for their world dominance. This model is the key to all prosperity of collective West and pauperization of global South. This model is the basis of power and influence of Western media, which is heavily engaged in convincing the world population that this diabolical model of loot and deception is real democracy which protects freedom and human rights. Every other model that exposes the truth of this sinister model is authoritarian and deserves to be negated at all costs. It is therefore essential that this one-way traffic from Gabon to France must remain intact and be protected politically, economically, and militarily. Even though the name Gabon and France is used for clarity, yet this model describes the relation between collective West, who is rich, prosperous, and developed, but poor in natural resources, and global South, who is poor, underdeveloped, but rich in natural resources. This relationship is the underlying cause of most of the past and current military conflicts, including that of Russia and Ukraine. Now let us listen to a commentary from one of the anchors of a media house describing the destitution of the people of Gabon resulting from the relationship just explained.
So who is Omar Bongo? He was a Gabonese politician who was the second president of Gabon for 42 years, from 1967 until his death in 2009. His legacy is that of a dynasty rule in the country. He became immensely wealthy in office while serving as France's point man in the region. He is a disciple of the first generation of African leaders. Omar Bongo came to power in 1967 when Lyndon B. Johnson was still the president of the United States. He presided over an oil boom that fueled an extravagant lifestyle for him and his family. During his leadership, Gabon used to supply over 2 billion barrels of oil to France. He owned dozens of luxurious properties in and around Paris, 70 bank accounts in fresh banks, lived in a $500 million presidential palace with his fancy cars, and had sprawling estates across France. at least 39 properties and owned at least 9 luxury vehicles worth $2 million. But the tide of money did little to lift his country of 1.5 million people out of chronic poverty. Basically, the Bongo family became major French property owners while his country remained poverty-stricken. So what were the main factors behind his rise to wealth and power? Two factors: oil and France. This is the sphere of France's influence on Africa. The French colonies in the continent and Gabon was the jackpot in a largely deserted and poor neighborhood. An oil-rich nation, most countries in West Africa have experienced lengthy civil wars or successive military coups right after gaining independence. Yet Omar Bongo, who came to power in 1967, ruled largely unchallenged without much force, despite squandering much of the country's natural wealth and leaving it facing a deeply uncertain economic future. Bongo's rule is a masterclass in the use of patronage. His ascent to the presidency coincided with the country's rise to being Africa's third biggest oil producer, and Bongo quickly realized that money could be more effective than bullets when it comes to retaining power. He turned his relationship with France into a symbiotic relationship, supplied them with resources, oil, of course, in return for political influence, money and power. Gabon had 1/5 of the world's known uranium, which was sent to France to make nuclear bombs, and the then French president tested them in the Algerian deserts. Apart from the oil, France received iron, manganese deposits and timber. And what did Gabon get in return? Money. Low-interest trade loans, salaries for advisors and teachers, scholarships for 800 students per year, all of this on paper. Gabon was always important to France. Bongo has reportedly been saying that Gabon without France is like a car with no driver.
What we just heard is a description of the model we just outlined. It applies to nearly all former colonies, including India. In conclusion, it must be emphasized that relationship between France and Gabon and other countries of West Africa is a well-known design of pauperization. This is typically the relationship between weak and strong in animal kingdom. For human society, it is not only foolish but suicidal to expect that a strong and powerful human community will be kind, gentle, and magnanimous to the fellow human beings who are weak and peace-loving. Recorded history of the past several centuries with special reference to colonization are typical examples of relationship between weak and strong. Note how NATO and Anglo-American West is behaving towards the small, militarily weak countries that are rich in natural resources. Almost without exception, they are militarily raided and oppressed and exposed to high-tech mental subjugation and are conditioned to believe their subjugation is within the framework of freedom, democracy, and human rights. Make no mistake, since the end of the last war in 1945, at least 260 armed conflicts erupted in different parts of the world. Of that, more than 250 were engineered by the governments of Anglo-American West. Why? Because armed conflicts, meaning mass slaughtering of human beings, are a profitable business for military-industrial complex of USA and its allies. Corporations included in the military-industrial complex, MIC, are the most powerful lobby and exert total control over the politicians and government policymakers. No politician or government can possibly survive without serving the interest of military-industrial complex, which means they must do everything possible to promote continuous warfare under all kinds of pretext to promote profiteering of the military-industrial, that is MICs, are the merchants of death. That is the reason why the world is witnessing continuous war in one or the other part of the world. There is a saying, it's a crime to be weak. This realization must percolate among the world population who are main victims of diabolical power game of the MICs. At some point in the contemporary history, both China and Russia were also victims of Western colonial powers. It is their formidable political leadership that mobilized, conditioned, and reshaped their human resources to create a power base and counter the predatory practices of the collective West wearing mask of democracy and freedom. That is precisely the reason why West has launched a media warfare demonizing Russia and China. True, small countries like Gabon can follow the examples of Russia and China. Under the leadership of Russia and China, the world is changing rapidly. It remains to be seen how emergence of BRICS accommodate these subjugated small countries and counter the power of military-industrial complex of Anglo-American West. If you like what you see and hear, please subscribe and ring the bell.